So, hi guys, welcome. This is my 10.9 support tier list. Hope you guys are doing alright. Hopefully the 10.8 tier list helped you guys out. Just a disclaimer here, I don't want to bait people in too much. The overall patch itself, overall really isn't too huge. But I know you guys want me to do frequent updates on these every couple of weeks. So what I will say is, yeah, there are a few minor adjustments. I'll say straight off the bat, Bard and Nami will be receiving nerfs going into 10.9. But if you have seen the previous tier list, then you know you pretty much know what's going to happen. It's not that big of a patch, so we'll try and go through this as quickly as possible and mentioning the adjustments I have made. So yeah, here we go. Tier 5, garbage. There we go, done. Wow, boom. You can see those champions right there. So we're going straight into tier 4. I did originally have Fiddlesticks at tier 5. I've pushed him up to tier 4. That's it really. There's nothing else special about that at all. Rakan is still, even with the Xayah buffs, even the Xayah Rakan combo is still pretty poor. So yeah. Oh yeah, people in chat are saying, did you get a haircut? Yeah, I cut my hair. It's my Corona cut. So it might be weird if you've only watched my tier list and then suddenly see me with a lot of hair and then no hair. So yeah, Corona cut. All right, now we've got that out of the way. So Rakan still not improved after, even with the Xayah minor buffs that came through. The Xayah buffs, to be honest, were needed, but she still needs a little bit more. Starting through Maokai. I'm leaving him at tier 4. He could be potentially slightly higher, but he has not been played in a single game in any of my games as in the support role at all for the last forever. So I have no data points to work off him. I have not played it myself. Maybe I should. And get a better idea like I eventually did with Swain. So I need to test Maokai support at some point. I expect that I will be doing it soon. But at the moment, I don't think he is a champion that you guys should be necessarily be playing in solo queue right now. There are much more reliable, engaged support champions that you can play that do have data points that you can work with and synergies and things like that are easier to play. So on the whole grand scheme of things, don't worry about the Maokai. Same goes with Shen. Shen's been really popular top lane at the moment, but at the support role, once again, data points, we're talking high ELO, Diamond 2 to Master. Shen support, potentially played once. Don't recall anything noteworthy, honestly. It's okay. Like, if you're coming from the top lane role, but what I will say, yeah, if you're coming from the top lane role and you have a lot of experience in Maokai and potentially Shen, you could probably do quite well if you're converting from top lane into the support role, and that would be a good baseline to work with, the Maokai and the Shen specifically here, and maybe the Poppy. But overall, you will want to likely move over to something higher in the tier list if you want to maintain the hard engage that you're going for, but they are good starting points if you are coming from that top role. So I will make that pretty clear. Niko's a really weird one that keeps getting asked in my chat, and I feel like I'm getting a little bit of beef for keeping Niko pretty low, but it's not a champion I'd still would recommend. Not sure why there seemed to be like this very niche hardcore Niko support group that seemed to come out the shadows every now and then and try and nibble at my legs. But it's not a champion I'd recommend still to climb. And the Fiddlesticks is receiving an absolute minor buff apparently for the support role, but compared to what he used to be before his rework, his support value has decreased massively and is still, in my opinion, not a viable support solo queue. So yeah. And the Galio as well, that received that ult buff change, so that his ulti now gives allies magic shield. based on his passive. Once again, not played at all. You could potentially do like a Galio Senna starving lane. That could work, but then again, that's not really Galio as support. It's more like AP carry, so yeah, not great. All right, moving up to tier 3. Okay, so two things I've done here actually. Two things I've done to this is Lulu went down from tier 2 to tier 3, and Brom went up from tier 4 to tier 3. So 2 new champions got introduced into this tier list, so this tier 3 is getting a little bit more bulkier. Do bear in mind, like tier 3, I would say you can play, if you really want to play these champions, you can play them decently until like gold, maybe low plat, and then after like low plat, the only way that these champions can be played, in my opinion, are under very specific matchups during champion selection. So like the Lulu, for example, should only be played with a Kog'Maw, a Twitch, a Vayne, basically any hypercarry. What I will say is though, is that it is tied heavily on how good your AD carry is. Just to put in an instance, in a Diamond 2 game on one of my accounts, even yesterday, I had a Twitch AD carry, buffed him up straight away. He ran away, and then 3 seconds later, he went back in and actually like hard engaged. Like that is a very common scenario when you're playing Lulu, that your AD carry is completely blind to the buffs that you have given them. I can only imagine that gets worse as you get when you decrease in ELO. She would probably be really good if you're on comms with the person, and then work with that. But it's very hit or miss, even if you're playing with a hypercarry champion, whether or not the hypercarry champion is capable of even playing the champion. So it's very, very coin flip, and I wouldn't recommend it because of that. She does have great tools, but with the hypercarries as well, not in the greatest of positions as well. Like say if hypercarries get buffed and nothing happens to Lulu, Lulu will naturally become higher up in the tier list because of that. So she is very dependent on those hypercarries being relevant, and at the moment they're not really relevant. So yeah, getting complaints. I had complaints 2 weeks ago about Thresh in tier 3. So from my experience, and this is as someone who played a lot of Thresh back in the day, still seeks to make opportunities for him. Thresh is an amazing champion in a full pre-made. Thresh can potentially be very good if you're duo, if you're jungler. It's okay if you're with your AD carry. I believe everything else in pure solo queue, I think Thresh is pretty poor. And the main reason is Lantern. Like, people don't utilize the Lantern properly a lot. And even at a super high level play, people will put wards down to block the Lantern. So that's becoming like, people do that normally now. That used to be a bit of a gimmick back in when he was first released, people first discovering that. But there are ways to counter Thresh. I would say something like a Varus Thresh or a Kalista Thresh lane is still really good, just because those two champions in particular are pretty strong right now, and they have the Thresh being able to save the Varus is pretty nice, as he does a ridiculous amount of damage right now with the Fatality build, and he does need protection, as long as the Varus clicks the Lantern. And then the Kalista and Thresh, they can save each other with Kalista ulti saving Thresh and Thresh saving the Kalista with Lantern. So what the Kalista can do, Kalista can launch Thresh backwards, and then Thresh brings back the Lantern, and they can save themselves. It's fine if you're on comms, but otherwise once again it's a trust issue. And this tier list is about reducing the amount of coin flip that is going in your games, because you don't know what AD carry you're going to be playing with. You don't know until you get into game with them, unless you already play with them in a duo style. You don't know how they're going to react. Same with your jungler as well, in terms of clicking Lantern and interacting down with bot lane. So that's the reason why it's tier 3. You can play him for sure. Anything in tier 3 plus, I would say, is fine if you're very adamant about playing the champion. But I would say, you know, Thresh is one of the greatest examples of you don't know what you're going to get. You really don't know what you're going to get in your game. And once again, as you bring that in lower ELO, you'll see that, you know, even fewer people click lanterns and things like that, and jungle interaction with the Thresh can be harder. So that's why he's tier 3. Hopefully that clears some of that up. I did move Brom up from tier 4 to tier 3. I do feel like he has his places, like with a Lucian, or if you particularly want to play, say they picked a hard engage, Brom can work there, but it's kind of like the Janna of tanks. So he can disengage the situations quite well, but making an engage play, he has potential, but it's really difficult compared to pretty much every single other tank in the tank category as support. So yeah, hopefully that clarifies things a little bit there. Morgana, some of you might be confused by Morgana as well, especially around the gold under. I know she's a more popular pick as well. Can you guys hear that? PlayStation's going a bit mental. Sounds like an aircraft taking off. I hope you guys can't pick that up. So Morgana is a pretty safe pick in general. Her Black Shield against something like Blitzcrank is generally really safe, and binding with something like a Caitlyn is fine. It's just that outside laning phase, her potential really goes down, in my opinion. To the point where your ulti is nearly useless. It's completely tied to your Zhonya's cooldown. And yeah, just it's an okay champion if you're not sure about what you're doing, like if you're first pick. But there are better mages / enchanters above that will go through that are better in certain situations. Whereas like Morgana's like a safe, like all-round thing, but you won't necessarily like get to do anything too crazy kind of thing. But she's okay. I think I don't really need to cover through. I want to get through this. I feel like I got stuck on tier 3 a little bit too long there, but hopefully that the Thresh one, because I know people in chat were complaining a little bit. So hopefully that clarifies some of the things. Tier 2. So in tier 2 we've got Senna, Janna, Blitz, Zyra, Swain, Soraka, Bard. So Bard is one of the champions getting nerfed in 10.9. I believe the changes on his... basically, if you don't know the changes, movement speed, reduction on shrines, but the biggest one is tunnel cooldown going down by quite a decent amount at 1 point in E. So that will affect the roams quite a bit. It could easily affect you in terms of being ganked. You will have to think about using your E a little bit more conservatively. Bard's still a really good champion in solo queue, don't get me wrong. He's probably like one of the higher ones in the tier 2 still, but his roaming potential has definitely decreased because of it. His ult will still always be amazing, but his roaming will be nowhere near as good as before, so he can get punished a lot easier. Hopefully that makes sense, but that is the justification for moving him into tier 2. We have moved someone up to tier 1 that we'll cover shortly. Soraka, even I think I've justified her in keeping her in tier 2. I still think she is in a good place right now. I think her heals are really good. I feel like you're ultra forcing the enemy into spending 800 gold early into executioners is nothing to, like, you know, it's a big deal. It really is, because if multiple people start having to force themselves into the grievous wounds, just think about how much in terms of kill value in gold that you're forcing the enemy into spending into executioners super early, and affecting power spikes on things like Infinity Edge, Essence Reaver, any of the Zeal items. So it does slow down the progression quite a bit. So it does mean that the AD carry has to almost get like 3 kills in value to make up for the fact that they had to buy an Executioners. I will say like something like Senna is probably the only effective support against healing champions right now, because she will pick up Executioners in her build anyway, relatively early. And it also will mean that it won't affect, if you're playing Senna with an AD carry, it means A, as a support, you have more control over Grievous Wounds. And B, she applies it really, really nicely. And C, once again, you have full control that you're going to get an Executioners in your game instead of having to spend the first 15 minutes of your game asking your AD carry to buy it. So the only support that can really shaft over champions like Soraka, Nami, Yuumi, is Senna at the moment. So she is also pretty good right now. I know she's been nerfed a lot in little ways over the past few patches, but Senna is a really effective champion into the ones that are healing. Janna, Blitzcrank, Zyra, Swain have generally always been around tier 2. I don't feel like I need to go into them any more than usual. Swain is still one of those really good cheesy picks if you want a quick climb. Zyra, most consistent mage on the tier list. Blitzcrank, best hooker, just like me. And Janna, I mean, yeah, you know, you guys don't want me to talk about Janna. And then we got to tier 1. Tier 1, we've got Nami, Leona, Sona, Taric, and Yuumi. So I reevaluated the actual power of Yuumi right now, and I do feel like she's actually tier 1. She falls into... Okay, so a couple of people might question why I put Lulu at tier 3, and why do I put Yuumi at tier 1. It's true that they both are tied to the AD carry. The main difference is that Yuumi can just leave the AD carry later on, and the way the adaptive force scale works is that it literally doesn't matter who else on the team is ahead, whereas with Lulu, it has to be a hyper carry. So Yuumi can just go on anyone. So if your jungler's doing really well, if your mid lane's doing really well, if your top lane's doing really well, you can just go onto them and just screw your AD carry, because, you know, AD carries are AD carries, right? So Yuumi is in a pretty good, annoying spot right now. So just try not to get too frustrated if AD carry is not doing well. Just look for those avenues in order to hop onto someone else around about when turret platings are dropping off. Identify who's winning. One complaint that you might get is you're not giving the person who's fed solo XP, but I still think it's more beneficial that you stick with them to help prevent the counter ganks. And what generally happens is if you're attached to someone like your jungler or the mid laner, enemies will direct their attention more towards where you are. And then that could potentially also lead the person that you're on who's already fed to get more fed, because it's just baiting enemies to come in towards where the Yuumi is. So that works really nicely. Sona we covered in the previous patch, but the brief highlight, the TLDR on the Sona one, is that she's really good in low elo. In high elo you will struggle. She's pretty terrible against hard engage, but in every single scenario other than hard engage, she does really well. So if you are someone who is utterly useless on mechanics in the nicest way possible, Sona is probably a champion you should be looking at, as she's the easiest support to play, and the reward for playing her, especially low player under, is massive. So the only thing you need to think about a little bit is just positioning in lane, but mechanics you don't need any at all. Taric is still really good against hard engage, Leona, Nautilus, those type of champions where they go full in, Thresh, and a well-placed ulti will carry any fight, like Bard. So, as someone said in chat, underrated. Yep, Taric's underrated for sure. Just what I would say is, someone's having fun. What I would say is Taric shouldn't look to make the first move in lane. If you look at some of my Tarek videos I posted on YouTube recently, it's all about waiting for them to come to you, and then it's super easy stuns. You can always do flash E if you're very confident that you can get a kill with, if you've got a hard engage AD carry quite early in the laning phase, like a Tristan or something that can pop off, or a Lucian. But generally, I would advise forcing. You want to just stay calm, controlled, pay an attention to where junglers are, and he's just really, really good at countering the engage. Yeah, every single Nautilus game that I've seen, anytime an enemy is taking Nautilus, I let them engage, and then 9 times out of 10 we win the fight because they've already used everything, and then we can peel and work off that, and minions are helping us as well, and we're getting lots of heal sustained from auto attacks. Whereas if you're chasing, it gets a little bit more risky in positioning wise, and it gets really risky at that point. But he's really good at just being patient and waiting for the engage to happen, and then winning like that. Leona is the easiest hard engage to play, and if you want to engage at a distance, the punishment is very low because her ult cooldown is very low. So yeah, she's still really good, really solid, probably borderline OP. I think a lot of people are getting sick of her, especially when some other champions are getting nerfed and not her. So really good champion at the moment. Definitely one to look at if you want to be the one zooming in as a main tank. And Nami, yep, she's going to receive a base HP nerf, base mana nerf. It's potentially possible that she will receive a passive nerf. However, from the notes that I've seen via the Surrender at 20 website, the passive nerf is not there. So even if the nerf with the passive comes through, which is a minus 15 movement speed on the passive, it will overall mean for Nami, she will be slightly weaker around level 1 to level 3. Hard engage she'll be slightly more vulnerable to. But overall, and the whole grand picture of the scheme of things, Nami, yeah, she'll probably lose like 0.2% more of her games. That's it. She's still really, really good. Really solid, all-rounded champion that works with a lot of different types of bot lanes, and against a little bit vulnerable to hard engage, and she will be a little bit more so during the first few levels of the laning phase with the new base HP reduction. But you should be fine. It's a lot more to do with positioning against hard engage, but against mages and against other enchanters, she can still put up a really good fight. And yeah, I'm a Nami advocate. I've played her a lot lately. She's one of the reasons why I'm master, so I highly recommend picking her up still. Don't be too afraid about the nerf coming through. Other than that, hope you guys find some use out of this tier list. Just to clarify, anything in tier 1 to tier 3 is absolutely fine to play. It's just that when you get high elo, when you get to Diamond Plus, you're looking more towards tier 2 upwards. And you know, as I mentioned, if you are coming from a different role, definitely look to play what you're used to first, rather than just, you know, going straight into a fresh lane with fresh champions. There are a few crossovers there. You can play Shen, you can play Maokai if you're a top lane main. Try and find something that you can feel comfortable with bot lane, then learn bot lane, and then start adjusting minor things with different champions and things like that. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the 10.9 tier list, and good luck on the Rift. And if you aren't already watching on twitch.tv/Bizzleberry, come over, say hi. If you've got any questions, I'll be more than happy to help you. Take care.